You know, initially I was going to start out this review by singing my own version of an Oompa Loompa song, but I decided you guys didn't need to hear that. Consider that my Christmas present to you guys. Alright, before we get started, as always, a quick thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. If you enjoy the content I make and would like to offer your support, then for as little as $1 a month, you can get your name listed right here at the start of every video. Link to that is in the description below. And now, let's get into the actual review.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Gallery Gourmet, my name is Willy Wonka.
He's good. Too good.
Every good thing in this world started with a dream.
Wonka tells the story of Willy Wonka's origins. Taking place in his early days as a chocolatier, he enters the big city to make a name for himself, but finds that the big city is full of people who will stop at nothing to keep his dreams from coming to reality. Now, I will admit, I was one of the people who, when I heard this movie was being made, I rolled my eyes. I mean, say it out loud. A musical prequel exploring Wonka's origins, starring Timothée Chalamet as Willy Wonka and Hugh Grant as an Oompa Loompa. On paper, this seems like a really bad idea. And yes, under a less talented crew, this film could have easily fallen flat on its face and been a complete disaster. But I started to pay a little bit more attention when I saw that they actually got Paul King to direct this film. And if you don't know who that is, that's the same guy who directed the first two Paddington films, and even helped write the screenplays. Heck, he was also a co-screenwriter on this film as well. Now, this is an incredibly talented filmmaker. And so, while I was still skeptical, I was a little bit more curious and even cautiously optimistic. And I just have to say, this is a massive surprise. I was frankly astonished at just how charming, likable, vibrant, imaginative, and fun the movie was. It made me feel like a kid again in the best way. Now, one of the things I was most worried about going in was Timothée Chalamet's portrayal of Willy Wonka. Now, as an actor, besides one scene in Call Me By Your Name, I haven't been terribly impressed with his work. I mostly just found him kind of bland and forgettable. And I was worried that he was just going to put on either a Gene Wilder or Johnny Depp impression, but he doesn't. His portrayal is very different compared to the two. Gene Wilder's was a mad genius whose isolation had left him bitter and cynical. Johnny Depp's was a kid in an adult's body, someone who never really matured due to a lack of guidance in a parental figure. Chalamet plays Wonka up as more of a magician, someone who not only wants to share his chocolate with the world, but wants to put on a show as well. He's not really trying to be either version. He has, in essence, created a Wonka that is entirely unique to this film, but does still manage to feel like Wonka. I don't even necessarily see Chalamet pretending to be Wonka. I actually see a version of Wonka, which is impressive considering I haven't really been a fan of Chalamet up to this point. But he's not the only one that fits his character well. This is actually a really well-cast film. Keegan-Michael Key gets a lot of laughs as a corrupt chief of police. Olivia Colman and Tom Davis are wonderfully despicable as a couple of evil innkeepers. Kala Lane is pretty good in a breakout role as a spunky orphan where she's able to act opposite Chalamet and keep up with him. And this even extends into nothing roles. Like, co-screenwriter Simon Farnaby plays a zoo guard that has like 3 scenes, but by golly, he still manages to leave an impression even with those 3 scenes. These are really talented character actors that know how to make a small role and turn it into something, which is buoyed by a script that gives these characters personalities and memorable traits, even for the minor characters, which makes this world feel more lived in. And everyone is giving it their all. You don't feel like anybody's sleepwalking through it. But speaking of supporting actors, let's talk about Hugh Grant's portrayal as an Oompa Loompa for a second. Now, I will say, when I first heard this, I was, skeptical to say the least. And even then, the effect honestly doesn't always look that great. It was done via motion capture, and sometimes he does move kinda odd, or there's a random jerking that's a little distracting. But I'll be darned if they didn't write him very well. They gave him a good backstory and motivation, he has a wry sense of humor that Hugh Grant performs perfectly, and they actually gave him funny lines to say. So if you're able to look past how uncanny he looks at times, I think you'll enjoy him. And even if you can't, he's only in the film for like 10 minutes or so. The film is brimming with personality. The production design is really good here, taking place in a very Roald Dahl-esque world. The film actually does have kind of a mean streak about itself. Several elements feel like it's taken straight from a Roald Dahl story, like an inn where if you stay even one night, you wind up becoming their slave due to hidden fees, or a corrupt Catholic church that's covering up the crimes of a chocolate cartel and are literally paid in chocolate to do so. Parts of it do seem kind of like a mixture of Roald Dahl with traces of Lemony Snicket thrown in. A world that is quirky and strange, but also seems to be cruel and unjust. An exaggeration of the real world. But there is a bizarre kind of logic that does make sense in a way. For example, a dog likes to bite Wonka's pants. The reason? They're mailman's pants. That is actually really clever. And much like Paddington 2, seemingly small throwaway lines or seemingly silly jokes manage to find a way of working its way back into the plot. Something as simple as a handshake or even a character's occupation can come back and pay off in a way that you weren't expecting. Even if you know that something was said that you know was intended to come back later, you don't always know how it's going to come into play later or how everything is going to tie together. While there are definitely predictable elements to it for sure, I didn't always know where the story was going to go. The songs are good, but I also can't say they're truly fantastic either. In fact, most of the songs kind of sound the same. But, with that being said, the songs do sound pleasant to the ear. And really, that's all I'm asking for. And in case you're wondering, there are songs in which the Oompa Loompa melody from the 1971 film is used, and another version of Pure Imagination is used as well, with altered lyrics. If you really wanted to poke holes in some of the world building or plot, you definitely could. But, I don't know, there's just something kind of refreshing about a story that just embraces its inner kid. A film that just goes, yes, we know that if you stop and think about this doesn't really make any sense, but we're going to include it anyway, because. For example, there's a scene in the climax where the villains have the heroes at gunpoint and have them at their mercy. They could just shoot them right then and there and be done with it, but instead they decide to drown them in their chocolate. There's no reason for them to do it. Heck, it's actually a detriment to them because that would be a massive waste of chocolate. Shooting them would be much more practical and realistic. But it's almost like you can hear the film say, but where's the fun in that? But not done in a way where it feels like it's winking at the camera postmodern style. It's told almost like a straightforward child's fantasy. In terms of actual problems, I'd say the film is kinda slow to start, and maybe the first act could have been tightened up a little bit. Some of the references to previous Wonka adaptations are a little forced. Like, Wonka uses the phrase, strike that, reverse it, and man, he does not make it sound natural. Probably because it doesn't really fit with his interpretation of the character. There's a really out-of-place scene that's surprisingly kind of risque for a family film that just doesn't match the tone of the rest of the film. And yeah, the visual effects are a little spotty. Like I already mentioned, sometimes the Oompa Loompa does kind of move in an odd way that doesn't look quite right in several shots. And there are several effects that you can tell don't even try to make them look real. But I will say, the effects, even though they are clearly fake, are pleasant on the eyes, even when what we're looking at is clearly not real. And if I had to pick between effects that look good and effects that look real, I'd rather have effects that look good. Wonka is a mostly delightful confectionary, a film that is brimming with charm, personality, and imagination. It's a childlike fantasy that freely embraces what it is. To say that this film surprised me would be an understatement. I did not think this was going to be good. But this is truly one of the better cinematic experiences of the year. I was riveted from start to finish and charmed throughout almost as much. Wonka earns itself a nice, full shot. And I guess that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you want to see my early thoughts of any film I watch or to read more of my reviews, make sure to check out my Letterboxd account. The link to that is in the description below. And make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss any upcoming reviews. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.